Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. In today's episode, Virginia discusses how the emotional triumph and shared humanity of the World Cup beautifully mirror our own sacred pilgrimage toward relational, emotional, and spiritual truths. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
The World Cup stirs so many feelings and so many emotions percolate to the top because both things speak to what? The pilgrimage of time wrapped up in the narrative of my story, which I often reference and speak to, so people have a point of reference of what they can do with the details and the pilgrimage of their own story in the context of heritage, which is that backpack I think we talked a little bit about that we carry from the time we step into time. And as I'm watching these incredible athletes, and it is the most beautiful, the most graceful, the most viewed sport in the world. I think it's 6-7 billion people, maybe more, watch this. It's the one thing that unites the world is these World Cup games. I was thinking of great players, legends in the sport. Pelé from Brazil, Maradona de Argentina, Ronaldinho de Brazil, Messi de Argentina, and of course, many, many more in between. But these are the ones in my continent that I grew up with, right? But they're legends. You think about the names I just mentioned. When you speak to players all over the world, Messi is like a symphony. His name, Ronaldinho, Pelé, Maradona. These names, these guys are just legends, right? In the sport. And I stayed up the other day till like 4:30 in the morning. I couldn't even sleep. I was so excited because a new team emerged from the dust, and it's a little island outside of Africa, Cape Verde. A little island. I think the population, if I'm not mistaken, is relatively very small. And you have this goalie, right, that's 40 years old. And they're playing one of the favorites to win, which is Spain. And the story and the story behind that team, behind the members, it's the first, I think they just became a nation in 1970 something. And you have this small team that for the first time in the history of the world is making an appearance in a World Cup game. And they shut down Spain, which was favored to win. And I was thinking the enduring voice of a generation speaks to the triumph of the human spirit. The fact that they were able to finish that game 0-0 was a win for that nation. So I just thought of how the world was rejoicing with this story of an underdog. And then my mind went back to Pelé, Maradona, Ronaldinho, Messi. And what does greatness share? And it's this, that the enduring voice of a generation speaks to the triumph of the human spirit. Because every single one of those guys I just mentioned came from humble beginnings. Very simple people that made great sacrifices. You talk about a pilgrimage of faith. Those parents didn't have dollars, they had pennies. They had time, talent, and no treasure that they invested, the little they had, into the lives of these children that had a dream. Granted, every single one of those men that I mentioned were gifted. They came into time with something very unique. But there was no compromise for the hard work and dedication that they had to invest in what? That quiet, still voice that says, psst, 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 you were meant for more than this. And I stayed up till 4:30 in the morning, scrolling, remembering, listening to stories. And my heart was so full at about 2:33 in the morning that I just wanted to get up and go talk to God. And I literally said, I told Ray, I can't go to sleep tonight. I'm just going to stay up all night. I've done it many times working. This is just for the joy of celebrating the triumph of the human spirit. That is the voice of a generation. I need to get up and ask God why this is stirring my innermost parts. And it was really sweet because, well, why don't you ask me yourself, Virginia? You don't have to get up. And I said, well, what's happening to me? Why am I so compelled by these stories? He said, well, you're talking about pilgrimage, which is a journey to something sacred, something that people deem valuable. And that pilgrimage takes place within the confinements of time. But they're carrying a heritage. And the heritage is what? The womb of their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their passions. I want you to speak to that, because the reason your heart is singing with pure joy and you can't even sleep, it's because that's what you invite humanity into. That's what you invite people that are looking for rest to experience. This is the invitation of rest, to displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease that's afflicting a person so they can live in the freedom of wholeness. And these athletes, these legends, they developed the discipline of living in the rhythm of rest. The thing is that only one of those men has really stood the test of time and lived rest to the nth degree. And it's Missy. Married, childhood, love of his life. Has been faithful to her to the end. Built a beautiful family, a beautiful career, and a beautiful invitation to humanity to step into greatness. And it is overshadowed. Everything I just mentioned is overshadowed by his humility, his love for God and country, his dedication to his wife, his deep affection, of course, for his children, but above all, his love for humanity. And I think his invitation is in a quiet, gentle, intense, he's a fierce competitor way. He invites people, I think, wow, follow me. What's on the other side of the things that afflict you are beyond. And I think to some extent, David Beckham did the same thing. How can we leave him out of this conversation? Netflix has an incredible series on him. Pero Ronaldinho and the relationship that these men have with each other. Messi fue Manchester United, went to Manchester as a 10-year-old. His dad moved there with him and his mom stayed behind in Argentina because they couldn't all afford to go. Of course, he wasn't making money or anything, but he trained with him as a 10-year-old. He's almost 40 years old. You're talking about a 30-year pilgrimage of what? Blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, challenges, humiliations, facing his own limitations. He's a very, very tiny guy, right? So his own pilgrimage was riddled with many of the things that afflict all of us. And I think my heart soared because I didn't realize that that's the invitation of rest, to learn how to live in the rhythm of not just displacing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease, but working through spiritual disciplines to pierce the darkness of everything that afflicts us. So let me make this not so abstract. It was an amazing thing. I realized we're doing the same thing they're doing in a different terrain, in a different field. I realized that I'm on a pilgrimage through time and that my life is for humanity. And although my affection is for nations, my devotion is to humanity. Because I don't know, maybe it's because I'm old. I'm getting old. I'm 66 this Saturday. And I realize, I don't know, I crossed over to a very sacred place that I find great comfort and rest in, spiritually, psychologically, and physically. And I don't know quite how to make sense of it all, other than my love is for humanity. But I will tell you what has stirred my heart, and that is to hear and to see how much of the trash talk and many of the lies spoken about America are being displaced by the immigrants that are so joyful to be here. And the narrative that is manipulated by the powers that be in this psyop where they're trying to get families, individuals, communities, states, and nations to hate each other, and especially hate America, how that false narrative is being displaced by the millions of people that are hearing the stories of the hundreds of thousands that are visiting these World Cup games, saying how remarkable America is and what a beautiful country and the people and everything I know to be true about America. It's wonderful to see the global community come here for these World Cup games and speak truth, pierce the darkness that's being shoved down our throat to divide us. So I guess it's the unifying ideas of everything that is sacred about our common humanity. I think that's what brought me the most joy. And to know we're in that game, to speak about the things that unite us, that can displace the lies. And it's the same thing those athletes have to do to reach this level of greatness. And the Lord, in the way that only He can, said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've wrestled with these deep things about rest for 40 years. You have dedicated your life to things that you didn't realize. But now, rest will go beyond, go to places beyond your wildest expectations, your wildest dreams, to bring the freedom of wholeness to humanity." And as you well know, very powerful people in technology found us, and they're compelled by my conversations about the sovereignty of the individual and my love for people and nations, because I think that's what God spoke to. And so they're investing an enormous amount of money in advancing the cause of rest. They said I was a bloodless revolutionary. I thought that was funny. And they said, rest and recover revolution. That's what you started, and you didn't even know this. Now we will take it from here, and we have what it takes to advance the cause of this beyond your wildest expectations. And I don't know. I think my heart, these World Cup games, gave me a broader, more accurate and concise and specific love for God and of country, because I realize that He's working in imperceivable ways in all of our lives, inconceivable as well ways in our lives. And my heart just soars. And when these nations, these underdog nations, underdog players, when they scored the first goal, shut down the best team, you see what we call laws of nation, the ideas that unify us, and it's to advance, create, celebrate life that are obvious and speak to our natural affection. There it is, our core values, our core initiatives, the foundation of what we build R.E.S.T on. There it is in full displays to enjoy. So how can my heart not soar with gratitude for the love of a present, real, intimate, personal, loving God? Because these people are my brothers, they're my sisters. There's nothing that divides us. And the reason I find this so compelling, because we find ourselves in the middle of a civil war, not just here in America, but it's almost a global initiative to destroy humanity and to divide us and to make us sick, obviously. The pandemic and the plandemic, if you will, and all those things that we've experienced. We've kind of lived through hell. And in America, we're in the front lines of a war. And we see how foreign interests have invested trillions of dollars in causing a constitutional crisis to really bring us down, not just through drugs, not just through seducing the affections of weak politicians that have no spine, but are greedy and full gluttons of power. And you see how they've sold out national interests. And so what is that? This stage that we're at in the pilgrimage and the story of America is deeply infected, afflicted by the parasitical element of humanity that is threatening to make us very sick. But it's not more powerful than our natural resources, secured by 5 documents, 3 ideas, I just mentioned them, that establish this nation, that will unite us in ways that the world is about to see. And the constitutional crisis is that the character and conscience of a generation has so deflated, compromising, creating a conflict with these documents that secure our freedoms, right? But are protected ultimately by our capacity to self-govern. So if the character and conscience of a generation collapses, it's hard. That's what's creating the constitutional crisis, by the way. And what happens? They want to divide us more and tell us how it's black, it's white, it's wealthy, it's poor, it's corporate America and private enterprise. And they want to create all these divisions because a nation divided cannot stand. A people divided cannot stand. Our very anatomy divided cannot stand. When there's confusion, chaos, and disease within our very anatomy because there's narratives that are parasitical, fighting themselves in our soul and creating war against those of our body, or our body creating a battle within our souls because we're neglecting the spiritual things. We see how that battle can rage inside of us. And so we need to say, wow, this is amazing. R.E.S.T is having these conversations that are inviting us to look at things differently. And I'm excited about that because here's these tech guys that don't know anything about me, but the word sovereignty, liberty, freedom, autonomy, communion, so we can build communities, all this language, psychoneuroimmunology. For some reason, the truth of these words begin to shape and direct their thinking. Enough so that after 1.5 years, 2 years of conversations, they said, Virginia, we're choosing you to invest in. We're choosing R.E.S.T to invest in. Let's expand these ideas. We chose sides. We went to the Jedi side and not to the dark forces because the community, right, of these tech people, they split like everything else splits. People choose who they're going to follow. And anyway, it's beautiful that these ideas, this language, these words became so compelling to these brilliant geniuses that they've invited R.E.S.T into relationship with them. And now they're offering to invest in us. And it's just a remarkable thing to witness. And yes, I have an idea of the impact this can have on a body. It's wrapped up in their own stories. Their lives were riddled with afflictions, but their identity was not wrapped up in the happenings in their life. Their joy, for the joy set before them, they endured their cross. They were not victims of their pilgrimage, of their heritage, of their circumstances. They looked at those things as something that they got to overcome, not that they had to overcome it. They got to overcome them. And so much character and integrity and refinement took place. And I will add that all of them had threads of faith woven into their pilgrimage. Not one of them was an atheist. Every one of them knew that they had a gift and they had to steward that gift and all the challenges that come with that and all the obstructions. It's a beautiful thing. I think David Beckham, I think Missy, I think there's a few of them that really were able to endure by the power and authority, honestly, of God at work in their lives and their absolute resolve to be faithful to their spouses, to their mission, to their vision, to their spouses, to their children. And I think they understood the battle. They understood what was before them. But they developed the discipline in their sport of choice, right? So it wasn't because of sports. It was through it all that they became great. And I wondered, well, I don't wonder. That's what we do here at R.E.S.T. We don't look at people as victims of their circumstances. And we don't look at confusion, chaos, disease, illness, or even pending death as anything. We don't look at it as something to overcome. We look at it as an adventure we go through to have deeper understandings of what it is to live free. We don't chase a cure. Freedom is healing. The healing of wholeness, right, is freedom, but it comes through adversity. A man is perfected through the things he suffers. So in this rest and recover revolution, we want, not only do we have the science of that and why that is accurate, but we have story after story after story after story of testimonies of why the efficacy of our program is resonating now, hopefully, and will continue to, not just within our little spheres of influence, but nationally and globally. That's what we do at R.E.S.T. The roar of the crowds, the noise of the world, the confusion, chaos, and disease that afflicts all of us, we slowly help people shut out all the noise and go into the deep place of reconstitution. So remember that the disease state is actually the reconciliation of an emotional conflict. And this becomes very, very important because we need to look at everything differently. At everything that afflicts us, at everything that ails us. And remember that our body's always speaking. And when you take your pilgrimage and your heritage into account and the feelings, soul, and the emotions, central nervous system, that it stirs, your body often engages in that conversation as well. So to me, think about what this podcast was about and what we were talking. We were talking about pilgrimage. We're talking about heritage in the context of being homesick and loving humanity and advancing rest and looking at what we're doing in the context of what I'm witnessing is World Cup history and how different this is for me. And there it is. My personal life, desiring people to experience and see the constitution of God and the creative order and the creative and created order of all things. That's what it means to live in the rhythm of rest. And herein lies the value and the importance of launching this rest and recover revolution. because we want to change the way we all look at the confusion, chaos, and dis-ease that is afflicting us all in the context of what? Laws of nature. They're universal. They're absolute, without contradiction. Self-evident truth. It's obvious. It's accessible to all. It is the property of all. And natural affection, it's our capacity, our propensity, our inclination to share in these complex conversations in such a way that we're united, not divided. And therein lies the deepest hunger of my soul, is to advance this. So I would like to ask our listening audience for something that I've never asked before. And that is to go to our website, send your email. We do have a 30, 60, and 90-day prayer initiative, but for these first 30 days, to pray over the geniuses and the great minds that are putting the Rest and Recover app together. I have a beautiful woman, Sally, in Colombia, who is we're already international, but who's running our prayer initiative for us. And we are going to put your name and your email so you can get direct correspondence from our office to pray with us. 24-hour prayer vigil for the next 30 to 45, I think 45 days. We'll do a 40-day prayer initiative as these geniuses are developing the ads. And that's what we're doing. So we invite our listening audience, depending if you so feel called and led, to support us and the initiative of Rest and Recover revolution that we're launching. The aim is 100,000 subscribers to the app by the end of the year. But content, quality content, substance of the app and the launch stages is going to be very simple and accessible to all. And then we'll build it into graduate level access for those that want to dig deep. So I'm very excited. It's the first invitation to rally with us. So I think if you go to theplaceofrest.com or respond to our posts in the memo or comments section or private message, there's multiple ways to reach us. So you'll be getting an email. We have people in Canada. We have people in Europe. We have people in South America. We have people in South Africa and Australia that are very familiar with our work, but that want to rally with us and be a part of this initiative. We just want to bring the message of rest to the world, and we're doing our part in doing that. We're biospiritual, biochemical, bioenergetic beings. And as we all develop and grow in our understanding of what that means, we can help you displace confusion, chaos, and disease in your spirit, your soul, and you will see the fruit of it often in your body. Thank you.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about rest, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of Rest. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of rest, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.